Good evening and welcome to the January 25th Town Council meeting. If you'll kindly rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. For announcements, there are 3 meetings scheduled right now. February 8th is at 7 p.m. here in the Matthew Thornton Room is a regular town council meeting. February 15th is a special town council meeting. And there's no meeting on February 22nd, which had been previously scheduled. So we just want to make sure everybody knows that. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The 2024 transfer station stickers are available. They can be obtained at the transfer station office or the Public Works Administration office in the basement of the lower level of Town Hall. Due to today's warm conditions, the ice skating rink at Watson Park has been temporarily closed. We will reopen the rink in the days after the ice has refrozen. In the meantime, we ask people please stay off the ice. The library building will be closed to the public Monday, January 29th through Friday, February 2nd for the start of the elevator refurbishment project. Staff will be providing curbside services between the hours of 10 and 4 p.m. The library will reopen for the regular hours Saturday, February 3rd. Please check their website at www.merrimacklibrary.org for updated information. What's happening, Yvette? All right. Going forward with the upgrade to the elevator.
Perfect. You all set?
Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Any comments from the press and public? If you'd like to address the council, you could sit at the table here or step to the mic. And seeing no one. We have no recognitions, resignations, or retirements, no appointments. This evening, the councils must hold a public hearing on 3 items. The first one is a proposed application to the Community Development Finance Authority for up to $500,000 in community development block grant funds, public facility grant funds. Of the funds, up to $30,000 will be retained by the town for the administrative and compliance costs associated with the project, and $470,000 of the funds will be sub-granted to Jewel Estates Cooperative, a 44-unit manufactured housing product located at 74 Daniel Webster Highway in Merrimack, for improvements to the park's infrastructure. The majority of the residents in the park are of low or moderate income. The second portion would be the anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan for the proposed project. And the final hearing is the proposed housing and community development plan. And we have Donna and Robert here this evening to address this.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, before we move into the public hearing, Councilor Healy.
Yes, and I've been reminded by Nancy a minute ago and immediately forgot about it. I excused for this evening. Barbara, Councilor Healy is excused. And thank you, Nancy. Sorry. And let me know. Thank you, Mackenzie. It's not a good sign.
Between all of us, we help.
For the past week, and I apologize for not being here for a couple of those
No,
meetings.
you don't.
Yeah, I did.
He was enjoying himself a nice warm
All
water,
right.
so no, you're not.
Thank you for being here.
Sure, of course. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the council. Thank you for having us here tonight. I just want to briefly introduce Donna Lane. She's the grant administrator for this project who is working with the town to help Jewel Estates obtain this funding. And at this point, I really just want to turn it over to Miss Lane because she is much more well-versed in all of this stuff than I, and this is what she does every day. So.
Every day.
Perfect.
If you want to open that first public hearing, I'll read
Okay.
because
well,
we have to be very specific about
all right.
what
Should I read it over again?
Just
Stephanie,
open that public hearing on the Jewel Estates Cooperative Infrastructure Improvement CDBG application.
I'm opening that public hearing for the Jules Estate Cooperative for the CDB Public Facility Grant Funds at 7:12.
Okay, thank you. I want to say that there's informational packets over there on the table, okay? So I have to read, it's kind of similar, sorry, but they're picky. Community Development Block Grant Funds, CDBG, are available to municipalities through the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority. Up to $500,000 annually is available for economic development projects, up to $500,000 for housing projects, up to $500,000 for public facility projects, up to $350,000 in emergency funds, and up to $25,000 per planning study grant. All projects must directly benefit a majority of low and moderate income persons. This is a proposed application to the Community Development Finance Authority for up to $500,000 in CDBG public facility grant funds. Of the funds, up to $30,000 will be retained by the town for administrative and compliance costs associated with the project, and $470,000 of the funds will be subgranted to Jewel Estates Cooperative, a 44-unit manufactured housing park located at 74 Daniel Webster Highway in Merrimack, for infrastructure improvements. The majority of the residents in the park are of low and moderate income. This project conforms with Merrimack's proposed housing and community development plan goal of encourage municipal and private water and wastewater systems that are safe, sanitary, and meet DES regulations. That's a short-term and a long-term goal. Do the council have any questions or comments on the proposed application? Yep. Please.
Sorry about that. If you'd like to address the council on this first public hearing, you can feel free to step to the mic over here. And seeing no one, should I close the public hearing now? And I will do that at 7:14.
Then open the next one
Yep.
on the residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan,
And
please.
then I will open that at 7:15.
So this plan outlines measures under the Uniform Relocation Act required for CDBG projects that involve any displacement or relocation of persons or businesses. If the town were to undertake a CDBG project which involved displacement or relocation, they would follow this plan. The plan outlines measures they would take to find comparable suitable housing for persons or businesses displaced or relocated. No displacement or relocation is anticipated as this is an infrastructure improvement project. So when you ask for CDBG funds, you always have to adopt this. It's project specific every time you ask. So basically, if we had any displacement or relocation happening, we'd follow the Uniform Relocation Act. We're not doing that. We're just changing out some lines. So it doesn't apply to us, but we have to say that we have to adopt it.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions on that?
I guess I missed my chance on a question on the earlier one. Can I go back and ask the
You can.
CDBG grant?
You sure can.
Is that
Oh,
something that,
that's okay by me if it's okay by.
It's absolutely okay.
Okay.
We're pretty,
is that something that gets repaid or is that literally
it's
a
a grant.
grant?
Grant.
It's a grant and anybody can apply for it? Or is there a
Well-
limited amount of money that the town can apply for or?
Up to $500,000 in a bunch of different categories every year, and you guys haven't.
And how much is being applied for here?
500, which would mean that you can't ask for another 500 in public facilities until July.
Okay,
That's only July, and you could ask for $500,000 in housing in July, and you could ask for
and
and-
what's the 500,000 going to be used for?
this time for
Yeah.
this particular project. Jewel Estates is a manufactured housing park, and their water system, their distribution system's just old and full of leaks, and they're breaking, and so it's to change it up.
$500,000 to rebuild their water distribution system?
Yeah, that's this. There's also DES funds. It's $1 million something. It's like $1.5 million. So they're also applying for DES funds at the same time, which will come out as DES always is part grant, part loan. And so, there's only 44 houses in there, and if they had to take $1.5 million in loans, that's a lot of money. So they're applying for as many grants as they can get. This one often does parks like this because it's a community of low and moderate income folks for the most part. And there was an income survey in there that was done in July by RCAP, and they had over 80% low and moderate income folks. So the impact of having to pay for all this work to be done as a loan would just not happen.
Right.
It just couldn't happen. It would just fall apart. So right now they're losing, every time they fix a water break, it's about $20,000, and they have to do that. And they're obviously having a lot of water loss, and it's just time for new lines. And the intent is also some sewer lines would be done as well,
In the meantime, in the similar.
while we're
yeah,
making a mess.
Open it, yep.
Okay.
Okay, Tom? Is there anything further?
It's
Then if you'd like, if the public would like to address the council on this anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan, please step to the mic over here. And seeing no one coming forward, I'll close the public hearing at 7:18. And then the next one,
On the proposed housing and community development plan.
we'll open the public hearing at 7:19.
A housing and community development plan is required to be eligible to apply for CDBG funds. The proposed Merrimack Housing and Community Development Plan identifies needs which currently exist or are anticipated during the next 3 years. The plan provides a basis for guiding the town's housing and community development objectives and actions. In addition, the plan includes a CDBG citizen participation plan that details the CDBG requirements for public hearings, like today. And then if they got the funds, they'd have to have another public hearing during the project. So here's the goals. They're just nice goals. They don't commit the town to anything. They're just nice goals to have. And anytime you ask for CDBG, it's likely going to be one of these items. So this will cover you for 3 years, and then it has to be readopted every 3 years. Goal 1, encourage high-quality housing in attractive neighborhoods through development of innovative land use controls, regulations, programs such as incentive bonuses to encourage features in site plan, New Hampshire revised statutes annotated. I'm not sure where that came from, but so basically this is the one that you had before, your old plan combined with my nice goals. So the first are yours. Maintain the town of Merrimack's compliance and meeting the housing affordability goals pursuant to the workforce housing law. Encourage a varied stock of safe, sanitary, decent, and affordable housing for persons of all age and income groups. Ensure that housing choices are available to meet the needs to current and future generations in town. Provide for a sustainable and balanced land use pattern that incorporates the needs of many stakeholders in town. Encourage proper balance between residential, commercial, industrial development to ensure the town continues to prosper while protecting historic, environmental, and rural character of the community. Promote activities that protect the health and safety of residents and visitors. Encourage economic development activities to increase quality industrial and commercial development. Encourage the expansion and retention of employment opportunities for residents. And this is the one that we're talking about today. Encourage the municipal and private water, wastewater systems that are safe, sanitary, and meet DES regulations. And finally, preserve and promote the town's historically and culturally significant structures. So they're just goals that you have. And when you ask for CDBG funds, you have to be addressing a goal in your plan. Council have any questions on the housing and community development plan?
So you're suggesting that we are meeting one of these goals?
Yeah, we're going after the DES, the municipal and private wastewater systems and water systems that meet DES regulations.
And that was
Number
one
eight.
of the goals you just
Number
read out?
eight.
Yeah.
Number 8.
8.
Number 8. Oh, okay.
Robert, those, some of those goals that she read off though were from our master
I
plan,
think at
correct?
least the first 6 or 7 came straight out of the master plan.
So they've been in
Yeah.
the town of Merrimack since 2013 as goals through the master plan.
Is everybody good? I was getting ready to, she doesn't trust me anymore. So if you'd like to address the council on the proposed housing and community development plan, please step to the mic to address the council. And seeing no one come forward, I will close the public hearing at 7:21. So, Paul?
So the reason why this is coming forward for us, Jewel Estates is a private entity. The reason why it's coming forward in front of the town council tonight, maybe we should have said this before, is
be
that the Jewel Estates cannot get the money directly. CWBG grants have to run through a municipality and then dispersed out to the individual owners. We did one of these before, about 20 years ago on the Cottonwood area by the Shaw's by exit 11 in that area. They did some upgrades and they used a CDBG grant to do that as well. So this is similar to that we did. It's that they cannot get, the state of New Hampshire cannot send the money directly to Jewel Estates. They give it to the town. We're the recipient of the grant. Jewel Estates is the subrecipient. We take our $30,000 because we have to pay Donna to do all this and make sure that the construction's up to snuff. They're doing what they said they did. They're following all the rules and regulations and move forward. Donna does not get paid a penny if this grant is not approved.
And can I elaborate a little bit more? I wish I got all that 30,000, but anyway, that's set aside for things like your lawyers to look at the contracts when they come through for your, like this will possibly push you into a single audit, or you're already having one anyway. And it will pay for part of that. It'll pay for some newspaper notices for environmentals and stuff like that. It's for admin. So basically, when you get a CDBG, like the town doesn't want to get a CDBG if it's going to cost them money, because you know, as he was saying, only a municipality can get a CDBG. It has to go through, but, and so of course you don't want to take something on it's going to cost you. So there's a budget built in, so it doesn't cost the town any money. And the town could actually, you know, the money has to come through. The town could get paid, reimbursed for the time spent on it, through that money, because the money comes through. So it's set aside for that. In all honesty, I've been doing CDBG for 40 years, and the towns that tried to do that said it wasn't worth keeping track of the hours. It just wasn't worth it to them because it doesn't really take that much time. But that's a possibility. So the budget's set there so that you don't pay any money out of the town funds. And then I just want to, because it's been so long, and I don't remember what I was here for. I think it was some job creation, probably 30 years ago. So the other thing, the liability, because most towns will ask, what's the liability of us getting a grant and then us giving it to a subrecipient? So what happens with CDBG is a lien will be placed on the property for 20 years on the park. And so if the park were to sell, which of course is not going to happen, but if the park were to sell, they obviously can't make money off of federal funds. And so that lien's put in there to pay back whatever, say it goes down 5% a year to pay back. And so in a very odd circumstance, if something sold and they couldn't recoup the CDBG funds that were owed, that would be the extent of the amount paid back. They would never come to the town and say, wow, it was 500,000 and we can only get 200, so you're going to have to come up with the 3. That doesn't work like that. It would be limited to what comes back. So those are the questions that most towns that haven't had money for a while like to know. So
Yeah, great. All right.
So did you also say there was a possibility for a work improvement or something, a work-related CDBG grant? or-
there's a lot of them. So if you want to find out about any project,
No,
you
I'm
just ask me.
I'm trying
No,
to go
it's-
back through my memory. I thought we were involved with a CDBG
You did,
grant
and I
with
can't
Resonetics
remember.
out
I
in
think
in
REDC
Nashua.
was involved probably, and I don't remember the business.
Yeah, okay.
What
I
was
was
it?
chair at the time.
Yeah, you were the chair. That was the last CWD
last one
grant
we
that
did.
we got, and that
And
was
we
back,
actually gave
like-
it to a company in Nashua.
yeah, because we had money and Nashua did not. This when Walter Warren was still here as community development director,
Yeah.
so that's
Okay.
going back 15 plus years.
Wow, plenty of years ago, yeah. Hmm? I have been here long. Anyway, okay,
Alright.
I was trying to clear my memory
But
on
it's
that.
time for you to start getting more CDBGs,
Is
because
it,
it's been a long time. Well, towns are getting them.
I
Might as
mean,
well get them.
if there's
Well, it
projects,
certainly highlights.
I'm more than happy to support them if people have projects they want to come up with.
Well, if you have any ideas, just send me an email and say, is this possible?
Great.
Okay,
All right. So
Thank you.
we'll-
Okay, I'd
all
like to
set
make
on
a
this?
motion.
Thank you, Nancy.
I'd like to move the approve the submittal of the CDBG application and to vote to authorize the town manager to sign and submit the CDBG application, and upon approval of the application, authorize the town manager to execute any documents which may be necessary to effectuate the CDBG contract and any amendments thereto.
Motion by Nancy Harrington, seconded by Nancy Murphy. Any further discussion on the motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstain? 600. Very good.
In terms of the second, I'd like to vote to adopt the anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan.
Motion by Nancy, seconded by Nancy Murphy. Motion by Nancy Harrington for clarity. Any discussion on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
aye,
Opposed or abstained? It's 600.
And last but not least, number 3, we vote to adopt the Housing and Community Development Plan.
Motion by Nancy Harrison, second by Nancy Murphy. No further discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 600.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Appreciate it.
Authorize town manager
Thank you very
to
much.
Make a difference.
Hey, I thought Bill Boyd was just holding in there.
No, so-
All right, legislative updates. You have, yes, Nancy.
Sure. Actually, before do you have anything from Representative Mooney? Because I won't mention it
I
if you
didn't
do.
look at my email.
I
Paul, do
did
you?
not, I just,
Okay.
I did not receive, I did not receive anything.
Okay,
Thank
then I'll add her information. Sort of a quick update. We're still waiting for an executive session on the Environmentally Triggered Chronic Illness Commission, hoping that that's going to pass. Our very own Merrimack High School student Matthew Brown was back at the State House. Representative Rung filed HB 1109, and Matthew came to speak to the Education Subcommittee, the Education Committee last week, and that will require student ID cards to include the helpline for the National Alliance for Eating Disorders. Matthew came before, actually last session, and brought the bill forward. It was really well received by the committee. The problem was the phone number that was going to be used, that particular agency went out of business. So Representative Rung had to ask for her bill to be ITL'd, so vetoed by the governor, and brought it back. So Matthew was back and did, as usual, a great job. I had a bill in HB 1707. It was heard this week. I'm trying to think. I introduced it on Wednesday. It was a bill that would require PFAS polluters, companies that pollute, to be responsible for blood testing for citizens that don't have access to that. And we passed a bill in 2020 that requires New Hampshire insurers to cover blood testing. But the problem with that is it leaves out, families that the insurance company is not based in New Hampshire, and it also leaves out a large segment of the our senior citizen population and our disabled population, because federal insurance doesn't cover it. So Medicare, Medicaid. So that was part of the impetus for that. As excited as I was about bringing that forward, I was in conversation with some stakeholders, and I think people are aware there's some class action lawsuits going on, and it was hard, but I went to the committee the other day, and when I introduced it, I actually asked them to vote inexpedient to legislate. I killed my own bill, out of concern that it might complicate things in the larger class action suit, and I don't want to do that. As hard as we've worked, they're working really hard on behalf of everybody, and my concern was that might not help us. So it'll come back, but I just want to, discretion was the better part of valor, and I think it was the right thing to do. On yesterday, I sit on the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee, and Representative Mooney had given me the heads up that she was bringing a bill that would be heard before my commission, and she brought forward HB 279, and HB 279 was the Elizabeth Croak Law. And for anybody that doesn't know, Elizabeth Croak was a Merrimack resident who sadly lost her life in 2021 at the age of 20 due to an overserved and intoxicated driver. She's known as Lizzie, and Lizzie's parents came and spoke to my committee. What this bill will do it's an act that will increase the penalty for on-premises licensees over serving alcohol. I have the specifics, probably not all that, the details that aren't so important, but it was wonderful to see that there was such bipartisan support. It passed out of my committee 13-0, and hopefully it's going forward to consent. So that will be voted on next week. So I foresee that having a smooth ride, hopefully. I know the governor has written a couple of letters of support too. So, really important to Merrimack, and we can save lives. So it's unfortunate that Lizzie lost her life, but I commend her parents for how hard, I can't even imagine how hard it is to come and have to share that story. But they're doing it to save other lives. So, and then the last thing, was I wanted to thank Chief LeVake we've had a few phone calls. A lot of the police matters come before my committee, and he's a great resource around some, issues of police fitness and markings on police vehicles and municipal plates and all those kinds of things. So thank you for that. It really helps when we can, we have a say in there about how things impact our town. And just an update, SB 511 and Senator Chanley's bill, and that's the bill that she brought forward on behalf of the MBD because of the excess salt usage down in Continental Boulevard and in Industrial Boulevard, which has impacted the well down there and needed to be replaced at a cost of $2 million. So Senator Chanley put a bill in. We're co-sponsoring it, but Department of Transportation's not feeling all warm and fuzzy about it because it makes them, it requires that they use brine and so I know there's an amendment coming forward that hasn't been voted on yet. I'm hoping that goes forward. And we're still waiting for an exec session on Senator Chanley's bill that came from a hearing here around citizens were asking for sound barriers on the Everett Turnpike. So that bill is in. There's been no decision. I don't know whether it will need to be amended, but we're waiting. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Can I just add a little bit? I was talking to Maureen during the election, and she was pointing out that this HB 279 only raises the fines. It doesn't change the process at all. And so we're not trying to say that establishments are going to go through a different kind of hearing or investigation or anything like that. The process is consistent. They're just changing the fines from a fine that was set years and years and years ago to a higher number from 2,000 to 15 or something like that, to make it hopefully a little bit more painful for an organization in today's dollars to overserve somebody.
Right.
And I think the other addition, because I was there with you, I believe, at the same
Yeah,
time,
I think so.
was that if a facility is closed because of that, they can just say, okay, we're redoing the stove.
We're redoing the stove. Yeah.
Where the bill says, no, it will be known publicly. They're closed because they have been found to be negligent in serving.
Right.
So,
yes.
but again, it's important, and she was concerned that the word would be out as they're
Transparency.
making it very different. The process and how it's investigated does not change. How they are found guilty or not guilty does not change. It's just the policy of how much, and they have to make it public. That's the only two things.
The bill will increase the maximum fine for a licensee that overserves from $2,500 to $7,500.
okay.
And it for, quote, serving an individual who is visibly intoxicated or who a reasonable and prudent person would know is intoxicated, and such intoxicated person directly causes a serious bodily injury or death of a person or persons. And that was important because people said, well, there are people that pregame. So how can a bartender know that if I, serve 2 drinks, that they may have had 7? So the bartender could be held accountable based on the number of drinks sold to an individual.
But that criteria is no different than it ever was.
Right, exactly.
important
And
thing.
this bill was fully supported by the Liquor Commission. And also then the license suspension periods is 10 days, and it would go up to 30. So a judge would still have discretion around that. And you said the very important part was it also requires public notification stating the reason for the suspension. And it would be required to read, liquor license suspended by the New Hampshire Liquor Commission for overserving of alcohol in accordance with RSA, blah, blah, blah. So it's a great bill. It's got great potential to save lives, and I'm really happy she brought that forward.
All right. Thank you, Nancy. Town manager report.
I am going to forego my town manager's report because I think you're gonna hear enough of me in about 10 minutes.
Thank you, Paul. We appreciate that. There's no old business, there's no consent agenda nor old business. First, under new business, the second quarter financial report that Adam is going to present to us tonight for the quarter ending December 31st, 2023.
I figured this was timely. We usually do this around budget time to let the residents of Merrimack and the town council know where we stand through the second quarter of the current fiscal year.
I'll be presenting the second quarter
Your
financials.
mic
for-
on?
Oh, is it not on? Sorry.
Thank you.
Be presenting the second quarter financials for the 2023 and 2024 fiscal year. Overall, it was a decent quarter, similar to the first quarter. Year-to-date wages versus budget. The general fund has 57.8% of budgeted wages remaining through the second quarter, and approximately 58%, including the self-supporting funds, sewer, the self-supporting funds, sewer, and media. As you can see, we're projecting about $2 million in savings due to staffing shortages for the entire year, and a portion of this will be offset by overtime expense that you'll see here in a minute. With health insurance costs, we're currently sitting at 43.8% of our $3.74 million annual budget. This increased $110,000 year over year and was fairly steady over the 4 prior years. For our NHRS expense, we've had a big jump back in 21-22 and have decreased a total of approximately $18,000 over the last 2 years. We're currently sitting at 48.5% of our $3.4 million annual budget through the second quarter due to staffing vacancies. So moving on to our overtime expense, we're currently at about 70% of our $1.26 million budget for the year. The fire department overtime has increased 38% year over year, and communications has increased 16% over the prior year, both due to staffing vacancies. Highway decreased year over year due to no winter events in the second quarter, and solid waste has also decreased versus the prior year. Police department overtime is holding fairly steady year over year and is above the typical 50% benchmark through the second quarter due to staffing vacancies as well. So we'll continue to work with these departments just in order to control total salary costs for the remainder of the year.
So I'm sorry, I think I either wasn't paying attention or don't understand the numbers that I'm looking at. I thought you were saying 50% kind of numbers, and it says 76% for fire. Were you saying they were 50% over budget already, or for police?
For fire, I was
Fire or
I was
police,
saying that they've increased 38% year over year. So versus the second quarter, or through the second quarter of the prior fiscal year, they've increased 38%.
So what does the red number at the end mean?
Oh, that's where they are total so far for this year's against this year's annual budget.
So at the end of the second quarter, which is half the year,
Yes.
they're 3/4 of the way through their budget.
Yeah, for overtime expense,
and-
yes.
Communications is 150% of their budget,
Yes, for
halfway through the year.
Yes.
And we're fine, no problems.
Well, they're both due to staffing vacancies, and I guess you'll see against our wages, if I go back, we're projecting about $2 million in due to those wages savings.
Total, 2 million total across the town.
Yes, $2 million total across the town.
So go back to that slide real quick, Adam.
This one?
Yes.
Which,
The first one.
Oh, sorry.
Communications right there, 05, has about $95,000 estimated savings. If we go forward to the overtime, they are spent $53,000. Their budget was 35. They're about roughly $20,000 over. There is sufficient money due to staffing vacancies to cover the overage. The same would be true for fire, is that they're covering the projection of the overage right now would be covered through savings.
Mhm.
We are now fully staffed in fire. We are almost fully staffed in communications, right? We have an offer out. So once that comes in, that overtime number should go down in both those departments.
okay.
Okay?
Yeah, the way this was being presented, I had no clue what was going on. I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah. Yeah, from going forward, I'll make sure and point that out just to
Okay.
make things clear.
Thank you.
And then this slide is just to show, In the prior slide, the other departments kind of get drowned out versus fire and police. So this slide is just to kind of show that in a little more up close, more in depth, rather than being completely drowned out by the other departments.
And highway is 100% storm driven.
Right.
Right.
But this is only the 2 quarters of the year that are being shown here.
Yes.
So last year communications was a little bit lower, but not dramatically lower.
hmm
Thank you.
So in the departmental summary, we're at a strong overall position with 45% spend versus budget, leaving a remaining 55% of the budget halfway through the year.
I
That's
don't
in
understand.
general fund, and
Can
then
you help me understand those numbers in the columns? The last one says percent of budget remaining is 45%.
no, the percent of budget remaining is so in the total it is 45%
Okay.
for the entire town. Yes,
So
so that's 45% remaining.
so why isn't it 50? What if we're in good shape, why isn't it 50% remaining for half the year?
For the total for half the year,
If you look at general fund, Tom,
Yep.
we're in good shape. We're at 55.48% of our budget remaining for the rest,
General-
for the
general
general fund.
Right.
It kind of gets skewed because the sewer bond is basically at 3.87% of remaining balance. So,
Because we
and that's a
paid it already.
bond because it's $30 million and we have everything tied up in a contract with the vendor. So that shows there's only 3% left or 4% left out of money, and that drags down the overall 44%. So if you look at general fund, we're in great shape. If you look at sewer fund, we're at 55.64. And media, we're at almost 60% of budget remaining. We're in good shape in our major fund, 2 funds, and our general fund. So the other ones kind of bring down the percentage. The other thing to note here on this slide is that Pat Murphy Welfare 25 is at 15.94%. We know why Pat's at 15.94. We front load all her services, and as of Thursday, we had the discussion that she's overspent in housing. That's why she's at 15.94%. We know we're going to have to look at helping that department out. But overall, we're in good shape financially with what we have left for the remaining part of the year.
Okay. Welfare is a relatively small percentage of the overall budget, but
Correct.
solid waste disposal, I would think, is a bigger chunk, and it's only at 18.5% remaining.
We also front load our contract for our tipping fees, which is over half their budget. So we're, it's $600,000+ that we set up a PO right up front at the beginning of the year for the 6,600 tons of trash, 1,500 tons of recycling, 1,500 tons of demo. We encumber that money at the beginning of the year. That's why that shows that way, is because they have a big encumbrance. If you look at their encumbrances for solid waste, it's $692,000. So that is all encumbered for the tipping fees for our trash removal
For the rest of the year.
for the rest of the year. Yes.
And it's just encumbered. It's not paid out.
No, it's just encumbered, and those are actual. When the actual bills come in, we work off that encumbrance.
Okay, thank you.
and then the last piece is revenue. We're at 64.3% of our budget in revenue. Interest rates have been particularly strong, putting us at 105% of budget through half the year. This is $700,000 year over year increase. Building permits are at 95% of budget, which typically slows down during these colder months and then picks back up in the spring. Then auto registrations are 56% of budget halfway through the year. This is $288,000 year over year increase. That's due to people moving into the additional apartments in town. So overall, in good financial shape through the second quarter of this fiscal year. That's all I got.
Excellent. Anybody have any questions?
No, I asked my question.
You got it. All right.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Item 2 under new business is we're going to receive an update on the design and permitting phase for the Pine Knoll Shores Drainage Project. And Leo, Don are both
Leo
on their
and
way
Don
up.
are coming up, but I think Leo's going to be doing the presentation. I just want to make a point of clarification. At the last budget meeting, I said that we will not be issuing any debt. Leo came into my office the next day and informed me that we got phase 2 of the Pine Knoll Shores, which, because it's run through DES and it's a grant forgiveness program or a debt forgiveness program, it goes on the warrant actually as like a bond. Even though we won't be paying it off, we have to put it on as a bond. It needs the 60% majority to be approved for us to move forward, if the council so decides to move this forward to the public hearing.
Good evening, Town Council. Thank you for having us. Just wanted to start off with a little bit of background. As you know, the Babusick Lake is a phosphorus impaired water body. And the Pine Knoll Shores is a subdivision within the lake watershed that carries sediment-laden stormwater into the lake. The sediment is the controllable source of the phosphorus. The subdivision is 20% of the lake's watershed and yet contributes 40 to 50% of the pollutant load. Major contributors are the gravel roads, unpaved roads, sediment from the stormwater and septic systems. Most roads are unpaved and have little to no stormwater control. 20% of the watershed area. Yeah. Yeah. Of Babusick Lake. Yeah. Yep.
Sorry, 40% of the pollutant load?
Yep. And that was determined by the drainage study that was performed in 2022. You guys are probably pretty familiar with this. Our predecessors came before you in December and gave the drainage study results on this. As you notice, some of my slides are very similar to those.
Okay, thank you.
So the drainage, like I said, the drainage study that was completed in 2022, this was actually approved by town vote in April of 2021. Their recommendations on this were to pave the roads and install drainage, install tree box filters, install hydrodynamic separators, install a rain garden, a stormwater wetland, and stormwater treatment park. And what those three items are basically from smallest to largest wetland treatment systems. So stormwater is run into these bioretention areas and it treats the stormwater before discharging to the lake. So the recommended improvements were broken into 4 phases. Phase 3 here is shown in yellow. It's a little hard to see, which is in between the phase 2B, the red, and the lake itself. So the recommended improvements, this drainage study and conceptual design included the estimated yearly pollutant removal and the construction costs per phase. So you'll notice that, there is a pretty big price tag to this, but there's quite a bit of removal for sediment loading every year, almost 8,000 pounds, 4 tons of sediment to be removed just by these improvements. The current state of the project is we're taking the drainage study and the 30% conceptual design and bringing them to 100% design, full design of everything, full permitting for the project, and preparing the bid documents to be ready for construction. I won't go through all the items here, but you'll see these are, you know, the tasks that will be included in the 100% design. One of the things to point out is the scope, the estimated cost for the scope, which is actually the ceiling for this loan would be $266,338. So for the initial drainage study and the 30% design, the town of Merrimack was awarded the loan through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, administered through the New Hampshire DES. The initial project, which just the drainage study and the 30% design, was fully funded by DES. Their what they call it is principal forgiveness. So it was a loan, however, they forgave the principal amount. This current phase will be a little bit different. What we're going to have is we have a full cost of the design of the 266. However, principal forgiveness is going to be $93,268. And the remaining balance of this, the 173, would be paid through the capital reserve drainage improvements fund. So just to kind of refresh everybody's memory on the long-term goals is obviously first and foremost is to remove the sediment, remove the pollutant loads, the phosphorus, nitrogen. But the secondary benefits to this, and I wouldn't really consider these totally secondary, is we're repaving the roads, we're improving the infrastructure, adding drainage to these areas. We're giving this development, you know, a really good rehab for infrastructure. So, do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, my first quick question is, I remember the different cleaning mechanisms, the natural ones, trees absorbing the debris as the water leaches through them. Is there an idea of annual maintenance costs for this type of thing, or is that something we haven't completely contemplated yet?
We haven't completed that. That'll be through the 100% design. Yeah.
Okay.
There wasn't a lot of detail in the 30% design on the actual maintenance costs for those.
And then the numbers, the poundage removal, there was 4 tons of sediment, I guess. I can't remember exactly what you called it. Sediment per year, yep. And then 3.2 pounds of phosphorus and 24.4 pounds of nitrogen. For a lake like Babusick, is that substantial? Because it doesn't sound so substantial when I hear the number 3 pounds.
Right. The phosphorus doesn't sound very big. It is a substantial amount. It does get us into our goals for our MS4 permits, and it does bring us quite a bit further along the path to reduce cyanobacteria in Babusick Lake.
So, again, you might not have these numbers, but is there an idea of what kind of percent is this taken care of versus what's left to take care of?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head, that is in the drainage study. Off the top of my head, I don't know that number.
That's good.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, so just remind me, please, the project background, the project's gonna cost, we think, $3 million to install.
Yeah.
The 30% concept and everything, the 75,000 had nothing to do with that number. And the 266 you're talking about today has nothing to do with that number, right?
Correct.
We haven't
So
even touched the ground yet to
we
do
haven't
any of
touched
this
the ground.
$3 million in work. And we're
Correct.
getting
So
a
the-
grant that's gonna cost us 173,000 to finish figuring out what we're gonna do. Hopefully, the result is 7,600 pounds of sediment, 3 pounds of phosphorus, and
Correct.
25 pounds. But we're not even sure about that at this point, right? Because we haven't designed it.
We haven't designed it yet. That's based upon the drainage study. You're right. It isn't a full design yet, but those are the goals based upon the drainage study and the 30% design. But you're absolutely right. Those costs are not included in the 2.9 million for the four-phase
project.
construction costs. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess that last line is important. We're expecting to complete the project phases 1 through 3 using CWSRF loans and hopefully getting principal forgiveness
That's
of some
right.
piece of that.
So there's a little bit of technicality to that too. The actual forgiveness of the principal is based upon NHDES determination after the pre-application is already in place. So we put our application in, say we get the design done and we're going to the next phase, phase 1. And that's, I can't remember what the table said, say $700,000. We put our pre-application in. If we get approved, DES bases their principal forgiveness off of a point system. We don't really have anything to do with how much we're going to get back on the principal forgiveness. And so that also requires us to be able to, we're probably going to have to put the full loan amount in our CIP and essentially hope that we get a good amount in the principal forgiveness.
But that's going to come forward as another grant that that we would have to put on the ballot to get approved by the town.
Correct.
As a-
Any CRF loan documents that we go forward with, it would be considered a bond. And we would have to look at that because it's grant forgiveness, and that's how they want us to write these up as bonds, and it would have to go in front of the residents at a 60% approval.
And that's a 60% approval for a bond.
Yes, now it is.
Okay. Good luck.
One more detail I'd like to point out is that the NHDES Clean Water State Revolving Fund loans are also competitive. So we're competing with other towns for the same amount of funding. So every time I put in a pre-application, we're competing with 20 other towns or so. And we're really trying to keep this ball rolling. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Leo, you maybe already said, we're not spending money before we're sure what we might be able to obtain for a grant. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It has to be approved first before NHDES will allow any of this money to be spent. We're pre-approved. That's it right now.
Okay.
That's all.
And I just want to, because there was a lot of confusion with the 30% grant that we got, the $75,000 in that area, that people thought we were going ahead and starting construction on the $2.9 million. We will not be starting construction even if we approve this. This is just to get the plans in place so that we can go out to to go out to receive quotes from contractors if we move forward with the project. This is kind of what we used to do with the bridges. We used to get the bridges into a 30, 60, 70% almost complete phase and then move forward with, have it on the shelf and then pull it off the shelf when we needed to, when Bridge Aid came and we got the money. It'd be kind of similar to that. We're getting the plans in place so that if the town's council does want to move forward with the projects, we have bid documents and bid plans that we can actually go out and get. But once again, because of the way the SRF works, the residents of Merrimack would have to vote on this.
All right, Nancy?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about something. You talked about the low, it's 3.2 pounds of total phosphorus. And I know that sounds like very little, but as you mentioned, one of the concerns about phosphorus is the relationship with cyanobacteria, and cyanobacteria is impacting lakes across New Hampshire. The commission that I referenced earlier, the environmentally triggered chronic illness, we had Dr. Stommel from Geisel School of Medicine presenting last week. And the relationship between cyanobacteria and ALS is becoming better. The link is becoming stronger. And so people live around lakes, and there was a lake in New Hampshire, I can't remember where it was, but all of the study came to be because all of a sudden, all of these people around a lake wound up with ALS. So that's, even though these things sound little, they're big, and cyanobacteria is a huge problem. So, I just even though it sounds like a little bit, that's for public health, it's a huge thing. So thank you.
So,
I had one other question. This project is a requirement for us for the MS4 permit? Or
It's not. It's not a requirement, but it fulfills requirements of ours. So this would help to further our permit requirements along the line. But it's also something we've already started spending money on, and we've already.
It's something we should do. I'm just trying to make sure we're all aware and clear on the requirements and the value. I'm not arguing about whether it should be done or not.
Yeah.
So Babusick Lake has a TMDL. It is highlighted under our MS4 program, and they're targeting these areas. We need to be able to clean them up, and that's what we're working on towards. So yes, it is directly, but that's what we're heading for, and that's what we have to do. And that's what they state, EPA wants us to do is, they've highlighted that Horseshoe Pond, and a couple other areas that we should be looking at.
Okay, thank you.
So you'll be able to reflect that you are addressing the issues that have already been highlighted.
Yes,
For
yes, and
MS4.
that's what we put in our permit every year,
Gotcha.
that we are moving forward.
As
It
demonstrated
may
by
not be
this.
in leaps and bounds, but we're getting what we can in the timely, as best we can with the monies that we have.
Gotcha.
Trying to push forward, so. And we have been working, we had a phone call yesterday with DES on Horseshoe Pond, so we're gonna try pushing that one forward for this year also.
Don, does Amherst have, or Leo either, does Amherst have anything going on? Are they part of the MS4 scenario?
They are.
And they're
They
doing,
are.
they've got projects working in the,
Yes, they had done quite a large project a number of years ago where they tied all the septic systems, and they have a community septic system out there. So that helped in eliminating a lot of the waste that was going down into that. So yes, they are doing their parts around the lake. And now we're starting to do our part.
yeah, it seems like we own a big chunk of it, I guess, 40%.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
all
it
right.
depends on how the population is around
Sure.
the entire lake.
Right, yeah.
And this is a highly populated
It
area.
is dense, old stuff as well. Yeah. All right. Is there any further questions? Did you have?
No, I was gonna make a motion.
Oh, please.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just wanted to make sure Leo and Don were all set.
I had one little item I wanted to mention. Don had just mentioned we would be looking into Horseshoe Pond as well. The planning phase of Horseshoe Pond we'll be submitting the pre-application this year. That phase, so DES has a principal forgiveness, 100% principal forgiveness allowance for the planning phases. So that's just for that drainage study
Okay.
program. So the next one that comes up when you see me here again in a
That'll be
year, for Horseshoe Pond, that principal forgiveness, we kind of know what that's going to be.
Excellent.
Complain on it.
Very good.
So it's what we just did through the last couple of years for Babusick Lake. It's going to be very similar to that.
Right,
Sure.
that's right, yeah.
Be an easy one. Great.
Okay,
Nancy.
I'd like to move the Pine Knoll Shore Design and Permitting Phase to the public hearing on February 15th.
I'll make a second. Oh,
Motion by Nancy Harrington, seconded by Mackenzie. I don't imagine you need to speak to your motion.
No, no, I think, it's a very complex process. And it's difficult, I don't want to say it's difficult, but we have to reiterate, I'm remembering the presentation, and now you're adding more onto it, so it's a cumulative kind of thing. But yeah, it's going to be a long, and we can keep our fingers crossed that we can get that reimbursement.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is this a public hearing for the bond to put it on the warrant or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That didn't come out clear to me. I'm sorry.
By moving it to the 15th public hearing, we'd have to do a separate public hearing for this underneath bonds.
As a bond to go on the warrant article for
Yes.
this design and permitting phase.
Correct.
Thank you.
Right.
Should that be reflected in the motion? Or is it inherent in the motion?
It's inherent in the motion. It's
Okay.
moving to the public hearing. We know finance, when I sit down with Becky, this goes underneath the bond section of
Okay,
the public hearing
on that date.
on that date.
Okay.
The reason I brought that up is because the title of this subject was just an update on the Pine Knoll Shore design and whatnot. And what we're actually moving is a request for a bond to pay for the next phase, not an update on the project.
It's more than.
So I just wanted it to be a little more clear of exactly what we were asking to have happen.
Thank you, Tom. That's a good point. All right, so we're all, yeah,
On the motion
I'll
to
call the
move it.
question to move it to move the Pine Knoll Shore design and permitting phase to public hearing. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed or abstained? 6-0-0. Thank you. All right, item 3 under new business, we shall be deliberating the 2024-25 budget.
Let me change my books.
Mr. Chair, if I may. We had one open item through the budget hearings, and that was the cost to recycle. I reviewed the cost to recycle versus the tonnage versus equipment rental versus trucking cost. Currently, for calendar year, we did it on a calendar year because that's some of the numbers we had. For the calendar year, it was $147.63 a ton for the calendar year 2023 from January through December. We did about 1,200 tons at a cost of about $174,000 roughly. So it came to $147.63. If we say we're going to do the same amount of tonnage and the same number of trips, the trip cost went up $9 a year, $9 a trip in the budget that we're talking about, the 24-25 budget. That will put us right at $149 a ton, $149.59 a ton. So the 150 that's in the budget for the ton, for per price per ton for recycling is accurate.
And what are we getting for, our
Trash.
tipping for
Trash is
165?
no, trash is fully loaded cost on trash, I think, is around 140,
Okay.
135, 138, 140 in that range. Fully loaded cost.
Okay.
Because tipping is in the 80s, and then we have our gentlemen working there that truck it up to the facilities. So in gas and diesel and insurance and things. So it comes out to like 135. I think we charge, what do we charge? 135 to our commercial haulers. So it's costing us about $135 to take the trash up.
Okay.
Versus $150 for
Recycle.
recycling.
Is the, if I may,
Yeah.
does the recycling have fixed costs and variable costs involved with it?
They have fixed costs, semi-variable cost, and variable cost.
Okay, so what needs to change to bring that number down? How much of a variable cost do we have?
Our variable cost is the market.
If we double the amount, we're not gonna pay $150 a ton for each of the extra tons, right? I mean,
It'd be more trips. It would bring that cost per rental down. Because we pay a flat $650 for the rental, it'd bring that cost down per ton. The cost we pay per trip. The other thing is the market, cost per ton, what we're getting in the market. In December, it was the lowest it was all year, and that was like $76 a ton in December. The highest we paid for the year was in August, which was $103 a ton for getting rid of the recycling. So the cost fluctuates from 76 to 103. It's mostly in the 90s per month. Most months were, the mean was someplace in the 90s. Excuse me. So just by doubling our tonnage doesn't mean we're going to drive that cost down. because it's all market based. If we doubled our tonnage in August from say 100 to 200, we're still paying $102 to get rid of it. So it's going to drive up the cost per ton versus the 76.
But your fixed costs would be allocated across additional tonnages.
Right.
So
But the fixed cost is $650.
650,000
No, $650
dollars
per month.
per month.
Per month.
oh,
Yeah. So it's only $7,800 a year is on my fixed cost. My semi-variable is the cost per trip. It's $229 for them to come and pull the can out, so to speak, and bring it to their facility.
But it's cheaper for us to have them do that than for us to do it? I mean, what we're hauling solid waste right now sounds cheaper than what we're dealing
Exactly.
with for
The recycling.
recyclables.
It is cheaper, however, we do not have the manpower to haul both the recycling and the trash. We'd have to hire another person to drive.
Well, I didn't know if he was thinking about not doing recycling. I thought that's where you were.
Well, I mean, that's an option as well,
Yeah.
Right.
but I'm not trying to go there. I was just trying to understand.
Nope.
We'd have to
Very
bring on another body, whether it's full-time, part-time, I don't know, to haul the trash down to
So the recycling
Massachusetts.
amount would increase the amount of trash enough that you'd need another person, is what you're saying?
Both. I'm saying it on both ways. If we said we're gonna take the 229 out of the equation from waste management, we're gonna haul the cans ourselves down to Massachusetts, I'd need an additional body to drive that portion of
Yeah,
it.
but if we just threw it in
In
the
the
solid
trash,
waste stream,
We'd
we'd have
probably
to haul
need,
it up to
we'd probably
wherever.
need extra bodies as well, because we probably have 2 trailers on the road for most days. Two drivers on the road for most days bringing it up, because we'd fill up trailers.
You're not gonna fill up a whole nother trailer with solid waste.
No,
with
but
recycled material.
but it's bulkier.
Pardon?
It's bulkier than just crushing, garbage bags and dumping those versus cardboard takes up a lot of room.
Yep. I don't want to promote not recycling at this point. I was
I agree.
hoping that if we could promote it more, maybe it would bring down a little bit. But if it's only the $650 a month, it's going to change relatively.
Yeah.
It's not going to help us much.
I would like to get our recycling numbers up to the 1,500 tons that we have been budgeting for. I think, that would take 300 to 400 tons out of the trash stream and
Bring that down.
bring
some
that
more.
down. So that would offset those costs, and hopefully the market for recycling will go back up, meaning we'll get more money for recycling versus paying more to get rid of our stuff, the commodities. We've been averaging between roughly 21 to 23 trips a month for recycling.
Really?
Yeah, so you're figuring we're hauling at least 1 can out a day for recycling. Of course, the weekends, anybody who goes to the transfer station on weekends knows that we get a lot. They supply us with three what we call 3 roll-off cans. And, sometimes when you see a lot of recycling in the recycling center, those cans are all filled and we're waiting for them to come on a Monday or a Tuesday to make their 3 trips to give us 3 empty cans. So, but really, the question that was asked is $150 a ton in the budget accurate? And it is accurate when you add in everything.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So that's that discussion. I'd like
Shall we start at the,
to go over my sheet if possible
that'd be
with my
perfect.
explanations.
would be a,
During the budget, we've talked about a lot of different things. And first thing is the voting machines. And I had $80,000 in for voting machines. It doesn't appear to me that for the 24-25 fiscal year that we are going to actually go out and buy them. The voting machines that we do have right now are still good for the election in November and will be good for the election that we have in April of 25. I think from the 25-26 budget, we'd have to budget something for voting machines. we talked about it. I really don't want to be the first person to go out and get these voting machines. Let them work through some of the issues and problems that they have. The state to this day has not certified one vendor. They're looking at two separate vendors. One's from somewhere out Midwestish and one's in New Hampshire. So it depends on which vendor they certify. It depends on the service that we might get or not get with them. So I'm talking to Diane and Brenda. We think it's best if we just hold off on purchasing that. The other discussion we had was about fire overtime. When I looked at fire overtime, to be perfectly honest with you, I did a lot of numbers crunching over the last couple of days, and I found an error that seems to have been carried over from one year to the next. And that's in the holiday overtime line item in 0103 8111. If you look at the holiday line item, it says currently 10 holidays times 24 hours times 11 personnel. In this line item, there are only 9 personnel that would be accounted for in this overtime line item for holidays. So in looking at that, we're basically over budgeted there by a total of 474 hours. So I'm recommending that we reduce the holiday line item in that overtime of 8111 by the 474 hours. We're still going to pay for the 9 personnel, 24 hours times 10 holidays. And that would be a savings of around $33,696 fully loaded. Okay. In addition, I have done this 4 different ways and came out with the same number, basically 4 different ways. I use a 15-year basis to look at vacation time accrual and then factor 75% of that accrual amount for calculating the station shift coverage, and then actual sick leave used over those 15 years, and then everybody gets 2 days personal time and added that in. It comes out to roughly 8,800 hours that was in the budget. I looked at it a different way. I said, let me take the last 5 years, because the last 5 years we've really had roughly 9 personnel and then 11 personnel for the last 3 years with the SAFER grant. I said, let me look at the actual vacation time used. Actual vacation time used is an average of about 95 hours per employee. There's 36 employees, firefighters. That would come out to about 3,453 hours. Personal time, 1,728. Sick time used was 3,349, about 8,530 hours. If you take the 8,530 hours and the 8,800, you average those two out, comes to 8,675. So, okay, let me do it a different way. Let me do the last 5 years of just looking at the last 5 years of on average with actual. And that came out to 8,537. 8,675. I'm sorry, 8,675
That was the
hours.
same number.
Hours, yeah, 8,675 hours, roughly, around there, give or take an hour or two. I'm recommending that we reduce the station shift coverage for vacation, sick, personal time to 8,675 hours, which is a decrease of 125 hours, or about $8,000 fully loaded, $8,083 fully loaded. This will bring the overtime line item of 0103 8111 down to $596,218, roughly what they spent in the actuals for 2022 and 23. The reason why the budget is up from 502,000 to 596,000 roughly is because we have had gentlemen and ladies in the fire department go from not having any leave to be able to be used, to having leave to be able to use through the SAFER grant and coming off of probation. So I believe that the 8,675 hours is sufficient. I've talked to the fire chief about this, and he believes that that's sufficient as well to have station coverage for sick, vacation, and personal time. So the new amount for 0103 8111 will be $596,218, or roughly $94,000 increase from the prior year. Okay? Any questions?
No, but go ahead. I'd like to make some comments.
So,
but Andy, you
well,
want to?
So one of the things that occurred to me when we were going over the Q2 current fiscal year financial results is we say we're okay on overtime because we're saving money from wages, right? We just said we were over 50% spent, but it's okay because we're underspent on wages. And so if we take our previous year's actuals, and that's been going on for a couple of years that I've been on the council. So if we take our previous year's actuals and we say, okay, that's a good estimate of where we were before, but what we're not saying is we add the wages back in at 100%. And so we're in the following year's budget, we're taking the actuals from the previous year, which we know overtime was high, but we're also taking 100% of the wages. And so I'm okay with your analysis, and I appreciate you going back and researching that, Paul, because this one has been weighing on me a little bit. The last thing I want to do is tell fire no, right? But at the same time, that was an enormous jump from the previous year. So I appreciate you going back and doing that. My personal view is, as a single counselor on the town council, is this is a very healthy overtime budget. And what I would say is, what I would encourage fire to do is start managing it early in the year. From Q1, start managing the overtime budget. If it's okay for Merrimack to be down to 8 firefighters when we send a truck out on mutual aid, and Merrimack's covered by 8 firefighters, I think there's some shifts where it's probably okay to be down to 10 firefighters and not be paying overtime to be at 11 all the time. If we can do it during mutual aid, we should be able to do it at some other times. And so if we manage this smartly, starting in Q1 and making this budget go throughout the year, again, I think this is a very healthy overtime budget, even with the reductions that you've offered. We should be able to manage this. And I would hope that overtime budget doesn't increase more than wages going forward.
Understood.
I just want to take a moment to back you up. I agree with you. And I think there has to be an acknowledgement, because I remember when we were talking about the 4 additional positions and the SAFER grant. And I remember talking about, if we accept that, we're accepting and we're making a commitment to keep those 4 positions even after the grant runs out. But there was also a discussion about the overtime at that point, and that there would have to be a monitoring and evaluation of overtime after the SAFER grant and all that, and that there would have to be a time that there would have to be a limit, at which point you might have to go below 11. And I remember those numbers being discussed. So I totally concur with you. And I think in order to not become a crisis at the end of the fiscal year, where all of a sudden you have to use all this overtime legitimately, obviously, and you're at that peak where you're not going to get any more, that's what creates a crisis. Whereas if the fire department could somehow develop a procedure or a rotation on their own, where each shift would sort of pay a little bit every month, however you decide that, then it's not going to be a painful situation. And no one's going to be put in the position of, you've hit overtime in your max and now you're not going to get any. Because I don't think any of us want that either. So I encourage, as you have, for the fire department to look at those options. You have control over it now. You decide how you want to deal with it. But I just want to refresh memories that that was a discussion at the time too. So,
It definitely was. And as well, I wasn't at the budget meeting with the fire department, but I did watch the video, and the chief had made mention of staffing is pretty solid throughout the 24-hour cycle. And we did look into that more deeply a number of years ago, and there was a segment of time over the night hours where there was a definite lull. It didn't necessarily mean that it was going to hold that way all the time, of course, because things happen. But when it comes to staffing overtime hours, I'd like us to look through that again, do that study, whatever it takes, however many months, and come up with a real idea of what calls do look like throughout a 24-hour period, 7 days a week, and see if we might be able to offset some of that overtime with not calling in the 11th person for a period of hours over the course of the night or whatever it might be. I suspect it will be proven that it's, the hours of the night when most people are sleeping.
yeah, maybe you could do a 12-hour overtime rather than a 24-hour.
Yeah, whatever it might be.
Those
But
kinds of thoughts that, the fire department will know what the options are reasonable, and to be able to equitably feel the pain by all shifts. I mean, not one shift should get all the heat, but that decision is certainly up to them. But they need to know that that was part of the deliberation in the very beginning. So,
Thank you. All right, Paul,
Can I continue?
continue through your sheet. Sorry
Please.
about that.
No, no, it's a good discussion.
to
Thank
know.
you. The next item is the Wasserman Park Beach Phase 4 project of $100,000. I'm removing that for several reasons. The first reason is that when the budget was being put together, we were still trying to figure out whether or not we could get an extension of our shoreline permit. I've been informed that we can get an extension. The permit really didn't run out until November of 2025, so we can get an extension. The other thing is that every summer Dawn has interns that come in. The interns this summer are going to be tasked with getting a scope of work and some estimates of what the project is going to cost, and not just $100,000. So let's make sure that we have the right amount of money in the budget. And the other thing is that even if we did get all this going, we still wouldn't be doing construction until the 2025, after July 1st, 2025 season, moving forward. Because even if the interns worked on it this summer, we got it out to bid, we can't do work during when the kids are in the camp. So it would have to be in the fall of 2025. So it just makes more sense to put in the 2025-26 budget. So that's why I'm removing the $100,000. And the last one is the master plan. We had a lot of discussion on the master plan. Talked to Robert. We went back. Sharon found the archives for me. Sharon Marunch found some archives for me that showed that we paid for the last master plan over 3 years. I'm recommending we pay it over 2 years, because I remember how that process went over those 3 years in trying to get the master plan up and running. So if we can do it over 2 years at $75,000 a year, I think that will work out. Remember, we also have some other things that through this master plan we want to look at potentially. We definitely want to look at the mixed use in this master plan. We can look at, some people have brought up and some counselors have brought up to me about some other items that we may want to look at, such as how funding, because of the, even though you're not pushing us over the limit with your building, if we add the last 3 buildings on, your building pushes us over the limit. So things of that sort, and looking at those, not so much a user fee, but impact fee kind of discussion that we need to look at in the master plan. So by doing that over 2 years, I think we can get the master plan and look at those items. And I just throw those 2 off the top of the head. There are a lot of other things that we need to look at as well. We need to make sure that our language in the master plan actually reflects what our ordinance say, and vice versa. Our ordinance actually reflects what the master plan say. The one that comes to mind is the septic setbacks. The state has one, we have another. Now, those are things that we could look at as well. So That's why I'm saying we do it over 2 years at $75,000 each year. So I'm removing $75,000 from the budget. My cost savings tonight is about $296,779. I do want to mention though that to all counselors and everybody listening at home, that my budget does not include a pay increase for non-union employees. So even though there's a $297,000 savings, there's going to be a cost associated with giving those non-union employees, about 60 of them, a raise in the coming year for the budget, which is not included in my figures at all. Usually we wait till after all the negotiations and contracts are settled. This year, it appears that on February 8th, all the contracts will be settled. So we need to have that discussion. Excuse me. In addition, the other item that really affects the tax rate, but not the appropriation side of the house, is I talked to Laura Martin, our assessor, our contract assessor today, and she feels that our values could go up about $30 million in a value. So we could increase about $30 million with what we have for construction, the phases where we're at construction last year that weren't finished, that are finished now, that are coming through. So she told me today about $30 million worth of a value increase. So if we take all that into account, I was proposing a tax rate of $4.50 from going up about 45 cents. Right now, without the non-union raises, it would be $4.42. I know the sheet that you see shows a different number, and that would be my, if non-union raises, because I was working off a different spreadsheet when I printed that. I'm sorry, I forgot to take that money away. So that would be the money that you're seeing there would be if the non-union would get that raise.
They do.
If they do, it would be right there.
But Paul, the 442 includes the 30 million in additional valuation?
Correct. Includes the additional valuation. So that would be a savings of, 8 cents right now on the tax rate.
And what about revenue? Is that holding revenue steady from?
That is the increases that we discussed during the revenue portion of it. We have another slice of the revenue apple back in September. However, we will be bringing things forward in the next several months to talk about some of the bigger items, like our ambulance revenues, some of our building permit revenues, things of that sort, some of the bigger ticket revenue items. I'd love to say that increase interest. As you see, we're already over by $1 million, but the Feds start cutting the rates and that thing drops quickly. And I can't tell you how many years I came in front of the council when I was finance director and said, next quarter, they're going to increase interest. They're going to increase interest. And they never did. For years. And then for years, I was saying that because that's what the projections were, and they never increased it, and they can decrease it as quick as they have increased it over the years. So, car registrations for revenues, that amazes me every year. And I can tell you honestly, this year, it isn't the new cars. There aren't a lot of new cars that are coming in, meaning brand new cars that are being bought with temporary plates on the parking lot like there has been in years past. I think the interest rates have something to do with that. However, the influx of the apartments have helped us tremendously keep that $5.6 million number for auto registrations at that level. If they lower the interest rates, 1% or 2%, people might start wanting to buy new cars again. But the other thing that I've listened to a lot of my friends who lease, they don't want to turn in their car because they're going to turn in their car. The fair market value might be $25,000 at the end of the lease, and it's $36,000 if they buy it out and sell it on themselves because it's that much more. Because used car market's that higher still. So a lot of people aren't flipping over their leases and coming in here. They're keeping their car because it's worth more to them at that point. So those are all things that we have to look at in September. for September when we do the revenues. That will be over the summer. But we are going to bring some of the bigger ones. Long-winded answer for your question, but we are going to be bringing some of the bigger ones over for throughout the year.
All right. So, we move on with individual department by department.
Either that, or just accept this and we can all go home.
I'd love that.
But you haven't heard from us yet. This is yours.
So should we do that one?
Which is, of course, why he said just accept this and go forward.
Just go?
If you want, just do it. What we've done in the past is that we have, if it's okay with the council, these changes, they have accepted my changes first with a motion. And then what happened is the council went through each individual department to see if there was any additional cuts that they wanted to make.
Perfect.
All right, so let's plan on doing it that way then. Is there anybody who'd like to make a motion? Paul's,
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the reductions of $296,779 as presented to the council.
Second.
motion by Andy, seconded by Tom. Any discussion on the motion? No, call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? 600. All right, so unless anybody wants to start in a specific place, I'll just go one at a time through it. So we'll start with 01, general government. Anybody has anything? Say the word. Hearing nothing. 02, assessing. Not much to do. 03, fire.
I think we've done enough damage already.
That wasn't damage.
It wasn't damage for sure. That was,
Depends upon your perception.
well, it's only 40
Yep, you
something
got
thousand
it.
that we made it.
You're right.
04,
Out of
police.
how many million?
05, communications. 06, code enforcement. Nothing there. 07, public works.
Admin.
Admin. It says that, but on my tab it does not. So I'm just going by the tabs. Thank you, Paul. 08, highway. 09, solid waste. 13, parks and rec. 15, library.
I have a question on library.
Shoot.
When we went through that, I didn't catch or didn't understand what might have been raises offered to the non-union employees in the library. Can we get an idea if there are raises built into this budget for non-union library personnel? Since there are no union people in the library, I believe, I'm just wondering if they're,
We have no union,
right.
and the raises are built in there.
Do you know how much they are?
I want to say it was 6.
6?
I shouldn't say because I don't have it in front of me and my trustees are not here. So,
Okay. I mean, we were just talking about what we were going to think about in the future for non-union for the rest of the town. So I was trying to get an understanding of where the library had come in at on their own because they present their budget independently.
right.
And I just wanted to understand what numbers we were talking about. 6% would seem high to me, but
I know we're behind the town.
Seems like
behind
that's
the
what they
town
said
or
during-
behind other towns?
We're behind the non-union here in the government.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, we haven't picked a number yet. We haven't.
No, what I'm saying is Deb and Janet sat down and compared salaries to the government, non-union office workers with our staff and noticed that we were behind.
Quick back of math. It looks like on average 5.49%.
So that,
Okay.
so you're comparing our own government staff.
Yes, because
Okay,
we're,
that's what I just
we
wanna
don't
make sure.
have any unions. We're not involved in their
understand you don't,
discussion,
but
so
so-
we have to kind of, they're
just
doing their
didn't-
best to make their own decisions and comparisons, but that's the best we could do.
Okay, I don't know how you would compare library staff against general government staff or something like that, but, so I'm not sure what they did in their comparison. I would have thought you'd compare against other libraries or something.
We do.
like-
Oh, we do.
okay.
Absolutely. Yes. We've done that and we're also behind there. So, but they're not here to speak to their work behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah, 'cause
probably shouldn't speak for them.
I don't remember the percent, but last year there was a big makeup year because you were behind. But I don't remember what that percent was.
Yeah, I thought it was too. So I was just trying to understand. I'm trying to get a feel for our future discussion with the rest of the town employees, what things might be. And I had missed it from then. I'm not trying to
No,
torpedo you guys. I'm just trying to
I-
understand.
absolutely, but it's separate. So we're not speaking to the town manager about any of the salaries on his side or raises or steps or a salary schedule. We haven't had that discussion. We probably will have that discussion.
Yes,
In
I
the
think
future?
Janet asked
Right.
to come and understand how the town council is moving forward with the non-union individuals in town.
But, so my point is, if we come through with a non-union raise on the 8th or the 15th or whatever of next month, the library people are not a part of that.
Correct. That is correct. They already
They've already
put their
put it in
raise
this
in there.
budget here.
Right, and that's been this way for a number of years. The library's always been separate. For people at home, I know we keep it as a town department. However, the money that gets voted on is the library's money. And if it's $1 million, the library gets $1 million. And they let us control their money because we pay their bills and pay their wages and things of that sort. Other libraries say, give me the $1 million, and they have their own accounting staffs
Right.
and they pay their own bill. We use that here they use the town of Merrimack Finance Department to do all of that. So yes, Tom, you are correct that when we talk about a raise for non-union, the library is separate.
Okay.
Not that I never thought of doing it and have never done it, but does the council have a say over the bottom line?
Yes, they
I
do.
thought so. Yeah.
They,
Right.
you.
We've never done that, I don't
No,
believe.
well,
Yeah, we
Eileen
have.
did a couple of years when
But it
it
was-
was way back at the
We
very
did reduce
beginning.
their bottom line once.
Yeah,
Did we do it or did they agree to it? Because I didn't remember that.
well,
I just knew I knew we had that opportunity.
it was
I
done
believe we
twice
did.
to the library.
Yep.
Once prior to becoming a town council, it was done bottom line reduction,
The year
and-
before.
and once after they were there, and it was done as a reduction. And you cannot, not that you cannot, you can suggest where the cuts might come from.
But you can't.
However,
Can't dictate.
they have the final determination of
Right.
where that cut
Trustees.
comes from, the
Yeah.
trustees, because they are the board that is fiduciary responsible for whatever the library bottom line is on the budget.
Very good. Good, Tom?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Your
Excellent.
budget's up, some 80,000 or something from last year, is that right? Went from 1.26 to 1.335.
Mhm.
But it hadn't changed much in the year prior, so I was just trying to understand
Mhm.
where some of those differences were. And
One of the big differences, like everything else, health insurance. They got hit in health insurance, and then their raises are about $32,000. I'm trying to get to the bottom line. Come on, my computer's very slow right now.
I seem to remember that health insurance was the big.
Health
big-
Yeah,
Sure.
22,000.
Yeah, health insurance, their majority of their increase was in the salary line item. They went from 922 to 984, between 31 for the raises and the health insurance. That's really covers that. And then in their all other, they went up for $14,000. And then the trustees out of that 14 put $5,200 into it.
Interestingly, the health insurance went up more in the past year's budget than it went in this year's budget, and yet their budget jumped a lot more overall this year than it did
Right.
that year.
Right.
Okay.
And I guess it's mostly salary, but anyway, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna let it go. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Yvette.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it.
All right, moving on to 16, equipment maintenance. 17, buildings and grounds. 21, community development. 24, town clerk, tax collector. You're gonna make me go through them all, aren't you?
I'm not-
25,
I'm
welfare.
done. So-
Is every-
Done with the department.
if
I'm
we're
done with the
good,
departments. If, I don't know if anybody else, I would like to talk fund balance for a minute when everybody else
Yeah,
is done.
because wastewater media, so. All right, what did you want to speak to, Andy?
I'd like to talk about fund balance for a minute.
Well, first of all, are we all done? Are we not gonna finish up?
I just went wastewater media, fire protection, other wastewater, capital projects funds and other special revenue. We're done the departments there.
The only additional thing I want to say for future discussion is that whole transportation thing.
Yes.
So that's under general government, not under welfare. That's what I was waiting for, welfare.
Yeah. It's
But
under-
again,
it's under general
not to have a change for now, but in the future, we need to do further deliberation about that.
And actually, I talked to Pat, and we are going to bring in the coordinator to come in front of the town council April, May timeframe
Excellent.
to have a discussion with the town council of what services they provide
Perfect.
and everything. So I think, I know it's been years that before they've come before you. So we're going to ask them to come to a meeting in the April and May timeframe.
That would be great. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's all I had.
And I just, yes, and Barbara had, when she let me know she wasn't going to be here this evening, had said she wanted to have that opportunity to speak about it,
Yeah.
not to do it right now.
And it's tough right now because we're on such a time crunch to try to get these people in to discuss this stuff. So that's why we're saying, okay, we're gonna bring them in after so you can hear what they have to say. And if we make changes, it's just gonna be a cost savings.
Okay, and I must have
Thank you.
skipped Walker. I thought I had said that. I apologize.
No, you did,
Oh, but it's under,
but never mind. It's okay.
Because it's down near the end, yeah.
Before we move into the fund balance discussion, if I could have a motion to
Yeah.
move $39,583,276 of appropriations budget to I have the motion on the paper.
yeah, what was the number? I'm sorry, Paul.
$39,583,276 for the operating budget to the public hearing on February 15th.
So moved.
Second.
That's the easiest way to do it.
I think I would have kept one of those
Serves the
sheets.
purpose.
What, so on your, if I might ask, the sheet you passed out under appropriations, you have a bunch of things listed for media, for fire protection, for library. What do those numbers represent?
Those represent the appropriate, the budgets for those departments. They are a separate department. So
What does 17,200 for library mean?
17,200 for library is the additional money that the trustees take out of their funds that they have and put it
Put
towards
into
the
their
budget.
So it's library trustees funds.
Yes, library trustee fund, yes. And then police outside detail, anything underneath the revised general fund appropriation is a self-supporting fund. Whatever they take in for appropriations, we get offset by revenue.
Okay,
So that's why we break each one out individually. Because on those, if there's a cut or an add, it's a cut or an add to the revenue side as well. Doesn't affect the tax rate.
right, okay. So fire outside detail expects to bring in $12,795.
Correct, and they do a couple of events. They do the triathlon down at for the YMCA. And today, I heard there's not gonna be a Rib Fest, but they would do, like, if they go to a Rib Fest or another event like that, they would get
They would
an
get
outside
paid for
detail.
that.
They get paid
Yeah.
for that.
Okay. And I always am concerned that police outside detail budget is going to be sufficient to cover whatever stuff is going on, because we can't spend more than that amount.
Well,
We can't pay more than that amount.
we
for
can
outside
spend more,
details.
it's just we'd have to find it. We can't overspend our appropriation bottom line.
Right.
So we could spend more if we had appropriation savings in the police department or other departments.
Right.
But at 5,000 hours, I think that should be sufficient. I think it's over 5,000. How many hours, Adam? 5,137? I ring the bell.
For
Is that the
police
hours?
outside detail.
Yeah, 5,137 hours for police outside detail, I think is sufficient.
Okay. I mean, back when they were building the mall and stuff like that,
There was a
might
lot,
not have been,
yeah,
but today's expectations, that's
correct.
where we expect to be.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
So,
So,
So Nancy made the motion. Who seconded you?
I think it's-
Okay, Nancy Harrington made the motion. Nancy Murphy seconded the motion
is that right? Okay,
to move
39,583,276.
276 to the operating budget, to the public hearing on the 15th. There's no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? 600.
and I just want to let the audience know, as well as the town council, the audience and people living at home. If you have questions or concerns, come out to the public hearing on the 15th. That is when the council can still have another bite at the apple, so to speak, and either make changes if they see fit before it goes to the warrant. Once it goes to the warrant, it's to the warrant, and then it's voted on in April. Well, you have another chance at the apple at the deliberative session, and then it goes to the ballot in April. So, if you have questions, please come out to the February 15th public hearing.
And we definitely want to thank the staff. Sorry I had to be here so late. I always feel guilty because I know those seats are just terrible. Your feet don't reach the floor. But we really appreciate you being here, all these meetings, the ones that I missed and this one and all. So, but thanks for your time. I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
They're here because I told them if they're not, you're gonna cut their budget by significant
It's a
amounts.
safe bet to do that. It's really a good move. But I know it's a long thing. And I stood to let you know where I was. I asked Paul, should we move this up to the beginning? He told me no.
So,
So
yeah.
Well, otherwise it would have been Wednesday and they'd have.
thank you again. And
So one other thing, before they all leave, I want to thank them for all their hard work in the budget. They really have
Yep.
stepped up this year and done a lot of the hard work, and they made my job a little bit easier going through this and trying to explain some of this stuff. But all these cuts that I presented tonight, I discussed with the department head that was affected, and they were all understanding. While some were kicking and screaming, they all understood what the cut was, and they, for the most part, they were in agreement with it and understood why we were making these cuts. So without, their leadership in their departments and understanding what we're doing with the budget, it makes it go a long way. And we have to implement it. So I do
It's
appreciate all their hard
appreciated.
work.
Thank you for your
absolutely. All righty. You don't have to stay. We're moving on.
Some of them have capital reserves that they may want to stay.
Oh,
What's that?
Some of them have
Capital
capital
reserves.
reserves and they may want to stay.
I want to stay for capital reserve discussions.
You'll see the ones who have capital reserves.
Reserve. Or is that just because we're coming in for that here?
What, capital reserves? Well, we have to let Andy talk about the fund.
So if
Capital,
If you want to go to capital reserve funding tab in the budget,
CRF funding.
CRF funding, I'm proposing $2,250,000 for capital reserve funding in myriad of capital reserve funds. We had a pretty extensive discussion about the fire equipment and the ambulance capital reserve fund the other night, and looking at it, the other one that was significantly increased is road infrastructure capital reserve fund, and that's due to the increased cost of construction costs to do drainage and pipes, and it's labor and material. So that went up $105,000. In total, the increase was, of course, my calculator ain't working tonight. It was an increase of $302,750 from the prior year. So, and that's just to keep us afloat and buy our equipment and make sure that we can do our bridge projects and our drainage projects and buy ambulances and fire trucks. So I would like somebody to make a motion to move $2,250,000 for the general fund capital reserve funds to the public hearing on February 15th, please.
So moved.
Motion by Nancy Murphy,
Second.
seconded by Nancy
Do you
Harrington.
want to talk to that?
Did you want to?
Not the capital reserve fund. I want to talk about fund
Fund
balance.
balance.
Which we could do after.
Right, if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed,
I'm
abstained.
opposed.
Tom's opposed. That's 5-1-0. Tom Koenig and ups.
And then the capital reserve fund for wastewater, basically flatlined that from the prior year of $550,000. And that's for all those sewer pump station upgrades and smaller projects that really we won't want to be bonding, that are in the $1 to $3 million range. That doesn't make sense to bond.
Okay.
So I need a motion to
Well,
move.
actually, I'm not sure of the vote. I would have loved to known only because it would have had me maybe
No, I
contemplate
just,
something differently.
the number
Same.
just seems phenomenal to me, and as much as it's easy to justify all of them, the computer equipment upgrade increase of 60,000, the ambulance and stuff like that. It's just piling all that on, 302,000 this year, when we're already raising the tax rate a fair amount, and we're already looking at increases in cost and operation and everything like that. It just seems like I know people like to save money in advance. They're charging the current taxpayers for the future expenses and stuff like that. I just don't buy into it 100%, and I'm
Nope, I
not sure where
appreciate
to
that.
justify trying to cut it. I just am not happy with it.
Nope, I appreciate that, and we've had those conversations before. I just
Yeah.
didn't know tonight. I was curious for my own benefit, I guess.
No, I agree with you. I was going to ask him later.
Oh. Well, all right, so now you,
Can I
sorry
just
about
have
that.
some-
Now
no
that I'm out of
problem,
the
no
game
problem at all.
completely.
To move $550,000 for wastewater capital reserve fund to the public hearing on February 15th.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to move that.
Motion
I'll
by
second.
Mackenzie, seconded by Nancy Harrington. Any further discussion on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? 6-0-0. All right. Paul, do you,
I can put it up on the screen if you would like. I have numbers that I did look at for fund balance, on our fund balance, roughly. What I did was I took what we normally put aside of $984,500 and used that to reduce the taxes. You know what? Let me just put it up on the screen. It'll be everyone. Bear with me for a second.
It'd be nice if they would standardize those locations. Every computer's got a different spot to plug in.
And even Dell has a different spot.
Yeah,
Both Dell.
yeah.
So here here is the fund balance sheet that we have, that we've been running for a number of years. To give you some history, at the end of 22-23, the beginning fund balance was 8,979,537. We used 984,500. We had some capital projects of 365,500. Total reduction of fund balance was 1,350,000. Increase, decrease to fund balance, we ended up having a surplus of 2,956,921. The adjusted balance to begin this fiscal year was 10,586,458, or roughly a 10% fund balance number. We go to the beginning. We used $1,084,500 to reduce for property taxes. We used the 984, and then during September we voted an extra $100,000 in to reduce to be used to reduce taxes. We also have a project going on of $1.4 million. That's the fuel distribution at the highway garage. Estimating $1 million going back into fund balance. We'll be at 9,101,958, or 8.2%. If we take that forward to the following year, that 1.9 million, I'm saying 984,500. I don't know. I'm hoping that we're only going to be putting $300,000 in. That's the number that we've used for a long time when estimating. We're at 7.51%. Questions?
Yeah. Again, going back to the Q2 numbers that you just showed us earlier
Yes.
tonight.
Mhm.
If I look at where we're at with current revenues and run that out through the end of the year, we're looking at outperforming revenue somewhere between 1.8 and $2 million. And here you're showing an increase to fund balance of $1 million.
Yeah. The only one that's really that we'd be looking at running that out is the interest. Car revenue, while we're up, I don't know if that's going to slow down now that a lot of people have registered their vehicles in these apartments. I don't know what the leasing cycle is. From what I've heard is that all the apartment complexes in town are fully occupied, or 85% or better occupied. So I don't know if we're going to still be seeing a large influx of registrations. The building permits, while they're there at almost 95%, a lot of the bigger buildings in town, the up in near St. Gobain, that pad that's put in, they would have grabbed their building permit. Gilbert Crossing would have grabbed their building permits already for the two buildings. That would be included in that 100, the number that we had. So yes, while looking at it, we're going to have a surplus in revenue and we're going to have a surplus in appropriations. We will. Right now, I'm conservatively estimating the $1 million. If we increase that number, we'll know better in June, later on in the year, what that number is going to be. But we also have that third bite at the apple when we go do the revenue, MS 434 in September for the state. So we'll have a better idea what that is. We also have a couple of items still pending that could affect this fund balance in a negative way.
So give me just 1 second here.
Go ahead.
So here's what I'm getting at. Right now, if we leave what we originally said of the 984,500 of fund balance to offset taxes, and we're looking at a 4.42 tax rate, that is roughly a 9% increase from last year.
Okay.
If we were to increase fund balance, and again, even if you ignored everything else and just ran interest pulled cash out run rate through the other year, we're going to outperform by $1 million.
Okay.
So if you increased tax offset from fund balance by another $1 million, we bring the tax rate down to 4.22, which is only about a 4% increase from last year. In my mind, that's what most folks are probably going to see as a pay increase is somewhere probably in the 3 to 5% range. But I don't know that anybody's going to have a 9% salary increase to cover a 9% tax increase. And that's my concern, is the amount of tax rate that we're increasing.
And I understand where you're coming from. Before we make any adjustments and say we're gonna use more fund balance, could we just wait until the 15th? Because I might have something coming in that's gonna use fund balance. It's not finalized yet, and I don't wanna squash it, but there could be something coming in that we're gonna need to use some fund balance.
The other fear, I hear what you're saying. The other fear is that if we use 2 million this year, we have a $2 million hole next year that we have to continue to fill in order to not have a jump of an extra 4% or 5% in the following year. And so we've been trying to keep it constant to work down that excess amount.
Slowly.
And maybe not working it very fast because we don't seem to be reducing it. But
Right.
if we go by a fairly significant jump like that, it's going to put us in a tremendous hole next year to try and fill that amount. And maybe that 2 million would still be there, but it's going to go away faster if we take it away that quick.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that the additional $1 million, and again, I don't know what Paul has planned for the future that we're going to find out on maybe the 15th, but the extra $1 million that I'm talking about, that is $1 million from surplus this year if our revenue keeps pace with what they're showing us at Q2. And so I'm not saying take an extra $1 million out of fund balance and create a hole. I'm saying let's use the extra revenue from this year, and that puts fund balance
Instead of putting it in
exactly
fund balance.
No, but
instead of putting it in fund
It
balance.
still leaves a hole in the following year.
Yeah, the following year, I still
in
have to make up
our-
$1 million
our
of revenue.
appropriations versus our revenue. We'd still have to come up with that extra million in the following year in order to have that same delta effect. I had a long argument with our previous town manager on the same line, and she finally beat me into submission to understanding that the impact, if you don't have that extra million next year to give back to the taxpayers, then you're
Yeah.
going to have to raise that in taxes. And even though it's not going to impact the fund balance directly, it is going to impact the following year's amount that you have to raise from taxes.
But doesn't that assume that we're going to have that same increase into the budget next year?
And I can kind of speak to that a little bit. Back in 2005-06, we were seeing big increases in interest. Matter of fact, we had, back in those days, we had $750,000 in the budget. And interest fell off right down to like $10,000. It took me almost 4 years to come back down on that revenue down to a reasonable amount of interest, because we couldn't just take and lose $700,000 worth of interest in 1 year. We had to phase that in over a number of years, because $700,000 at that time was 20-cent increase in the tax rate. We had to phase that in, knowing that we were budgeting interest higher than what we were actually projected to get, because of the way we had to phase that in. What Councilor Koenig is saying is the same thing. If we use that $1 million, which is surplus from this year, we still would have to phase that in over the next several years, because $1 million on $50,000, so 20 to 25 cent decrease in the tax rate would go up the following year automatically without batting an eye, unless you put that extra $1 million back in. What I can do is for the 8th, at the meeting, we can have this discussion, and I can actually present a run out and how it would affect the tax rate going forward and back down if everything stayed the same.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, that you're going to have to build it in and walk it back down.
Correct.
I totally get what you're saying. I guess the part that I struggle with is, how do we pass on a 9% increase?
I'm with you there. I don't know how we do that, but
And yet we're outpacing our revenues, and we're going to hold that and not, outpacing our revenues from interest cash means the only way we're getting higher interest is people paying higher inflation, because they go hand in hand. and we're not passing that back out to the taxpayers.
And that is true. However, when inflation really hit, we're 18 to 24 months behind the inflation curve. When inflation really hit back 2 years ago, we were still at almost, I could show the tax rate and where we were versus that. We fall behind the inflation that people see
We're a
in,
trailing indicator.
yeah, we're a trailing indicator of inflation. We're usually a year to 2 years behind where inflation is because of the way we do our budget. Right now, we're an 18-month ahead of our end of our budget right now. We're budgeting for 18 months in advance, which is June of 2025. Believe, I hate to even say that. We're not even 1 month into 2024, but that's where we're looking at in 2025 and trying to get where we need to be with our revenues and trying to get where we need to be with some of our appropriations. If the council would like, I could do that comparing the tax rate versus inflation to show where we've been. And I understand, I'm a taxpayer too, like all of us. And 45-cent increase is not, I'm not jumping for joy on that as well. And we take that into consideration and when I present my budget and looking at things.
Andy, I agree with Tom. I would love to take the whole 2 million, but the one time they did that was back in around 2005 or 6. And they dissolved a $2 million library capital reserve fund and used it to offset taxes. And the following year, the tax rate did drop substantially, but the following year it bounced right back up and then some. And the
You can see it in
that's all well
2002.
and- yeah, if you look, we had a graph, I couldn't find it. We had one in here tonight. But yes,
On there
if
today,
you look at it,
before
you'll
Paul
see
just
what
passed
happened.
out.
Right, and I just couldn't find it in my pile here. I
Oh,
know it's
okay.
here. But
There's
it's,
there's his graph right there.
yeah, if you can raise it up a little. It was 06, yeah.
Yeah,
06.
2002, it dropped down from over 5 to under 4, and then went right back the next year because we didn't have that 2 million to replace.
And the difficulty, just to finish my thought, is that I've always preached, for me, it's about the stability of the tax rate, and it's not been very stable this year or coming up potentially, but it's people definitely appreciate it when it drops, but that sudden rise again, it's quickly
Really
forgotten.
nailed
And
folks,
so
yeah.
to use it, I've been cautious in using it in my own head, probably more than most. And because I remember when we first started really doing this, I was panicking a little bit. But to use part of it, it's better, I think, instead of using the whole thing. I don't know.
And I get it. I mean, the last thing I want to do is create a spike, right?
Yeah,
But
that's what I was thinking.
I guess at the same time, the last thing I want to do is create an artificially high tax rate and then our fund balance increases, right? That's the last thing I want to do as well is turn around and give a bigger tax burden to the taxpayers than what they should be shouldering. And I think we have another chance to look at this before the tax
Right.
rates go out.
Right.
We can argue it then.
No,
But I think we should increase it some, but I just be cautious about massive jumps like that. I mean,
yeah.
And I-
Well, you said,
And I think we get into the dilemma of there are some things we can't control, like just the health insurance alone is up 20%. How do you accommodate that without having a sticker shock or dramatically decreasing everything else? I mean, that's a reality of things we have to deal with. And but I also agree with you. Maybe we should attempt to do something. Again, you're saying that there's a potential for 1 million. The key word is potential. My concern is if in fact we don't have that, but we're committing to this fund balance, let's say I agree with you, and let's go another $1 million. And in reality, we don't get the million in terms of increased revenue, then that's the problem. So I have a problem with the potential of it.
Then we may actually increase the fund balance like we've been trying to do for several
But then we
years,
can use
but-
it the next year.
But we have another shot at this. I'm willing to wait
Have
until
that
we
conversation.
review revenues and then we'll look at it then.
Yes, we do. And I know I'm being
Cryptic.
We don't know
Cryptic,
what's up
very
your sleeve.
cryptic.
I know.
Very, because I know there's some things that are coming down the pike
Right.
that potentially we would use fund balance to purchase so that it doesn't affect the tax rate.
So that's to be determined.
I'm willing to wait when we review revenues.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Paul.
2006 was the revaluation.
That's just what I was saying.
11, 16, and 21, every 5 years.
But again, the evaluation with the rate was different.
Yeah,
But we still get the same amount of money.
So, Paul, what else do you need in this?
I'm all set for the budget. We are moving to the minutes section.
Yep. You guys are all set. Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Yeah, we just need to move on to the minutes. Chairman.
All right. The minutes of January 10th.
We already did
We
it.
did, I think.
We did all.
We did all of them. Yeah.
Never mind. Thank you.
Okay, the January 10th minutes. Am I missing a page on this?
No, but just to let you know, I know exactly what you're looking at. The town council budget meeting minutes on January 10th when I was reviewing this, I said, where's the attendance?
Yeah, that's what I was just about.
Okay. And then I called Becky. And this was, what I'm going to tell you is the result of our conversation. You'll notice that January 11th, we do have call to order with attendance. That was not a budget meeting, that was a town council meeting. She is saying that historically, they've never done, and you'll notice our agendas, let me say it and you can correct me, never had call to meeting attendance. What you would put in is who was not there. And I went, oh, I don't like that. I think the format, regardless of the meeting, should have call to order, attendance. So she's saying that would be fine, but we should make that a decision tonight, that all minutes will contain, including the agendas, call to order, attendance. And now, Paul,
I never remembered it this way.
I didn't either.
It never has been done this way.
Oh, so
I went back after she told me that you had a conversation and we looked at past minutes together and it always had call to order.
Okay, so
And then
things
it's
have
just that
changed.
top line that says everything. So we are going to change that. However, what we need for tonight's minutes is the motion to amend the January 10th meeting
To
to
include-
insert the call to order, time it started, and the attendance.
So moved. Second.
motion by Nancy Murphy, second by Nancy Harrington. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I can
You
do
were
that.
here.
Yeah.
That was the first meeting.
The 10th, yes, I was here. I didn't see my name on the top, so.
So
Aye.
now
600.
Okay, we'll do the vote first. Go ahead.
It's
Think-
600.
I think I just said, we said yes. Yes.
Okay, so I think, so that is from the time, because I agree with you. I'm going, it was such a blatant, obvious. In fact, I thought it was a page missing and I looked down and went, no, page 1 of 2. So historically, that's, okay.
That has happened historically. The agendas have read the way they read.
Yes. Good,
you know,
okay.
And then
So it's a non-issue and
it's a
corrected.
non-issue and we'll correct it. And we do not have the minutes for any of the other budget hearings, so we'll make
Correct.
sure that they are proper and
Perfect,
show that the chairman was excused for those 2 meetings.
correct.
Which I felt terrible about.
Oh, sure you
I
do.
did, I truly did. And
We felt terrible.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun on that.
That's
with
okay.
you. We voted. Is there any other changes?
Right.
Sorry,
No,
Oops. So we're good.
we're good.
All right.
so we have to accept the minutes as amended.
As amended, yes.
So moved.
Motion by Nancy Harrington, second by Nancy Murphy, to approve the amended minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. You said?
I was with it, I'm sorry.
No, I thought you were. I didn't see the, so very good. It was a 6-0 vote.
Counselor, sorry, Chairman, Nancy Murphy moved the amendment. Who seconded the amendment? I didn't write that down. I'm sorry.
Put me down.
Okay.
It was a Nancy and Nancy opposite. One,
Nancy
Aye.
squared.
All right, nope, thank you very much. I
Okay.
just want to keep it square for the minute.
Okay.
Thank you.
next is the January 11th meeting minutes. No changes? We're all good?
Changes, I guess.
So, are you terrorizing me? Is
I
it-
make a motion to approve the January 11th meeting minutes.
I'm waiting on
Seconds.
Yes.
Can't read Nancy.
Motion by Mackenzie, seconded by Nancy Murphy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained, I will abstain, sadly. 5-0-1. Comments from the press, seeing none, or public? Seeing none. Comments from the council? Tom?
I just want to take a moment to thank the town of Merrimack for coming out to vote this past Tuesday for the primary election. I thought it went extremely well. I continuously get people that come by during the election and they talk about how surprised they are at how well we're run. We had several different observers and challengers show up down at St. John Newman, and they consistently talk about how smoothly it goes and whatnot. I was very impressed with the overall performance of the staff and the entire process that went on from my perspective as a town councilor at the meeting. And so just my thanks to the town for coming out. I know we're going to see everybody again in April for the town elections, and again twice more this year. So bear with us. We have things we have to do, but we need people to come out and vote. It's our civic responsibility, and I appreciate that you take the time to do it, even in bad weather. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Nancy?
Yeah, I want to reiterate what Tom said. I was at the upper elementary school and we had, I don't even know how many new registrations we had, and there were a lot. And a number of people commented that they were surprised how quickly, even doing that, the lines went quickly and they were able to vote. And I just wanted to thank all the election staff for the countless hours and the training they provided people, their willingness to answer questions. So I think another job well done. Thank you.
And I'll touch on it because I was at the middle school and it went beautifully and smoothly all day except for the first 5 or 10 minutes because we didn't have checklists. And so I got there and I said, did anybody tell anybody in line? And so I went out there to just let them know we're going to be a few more minutes. And I didn't see any complaints from my end. Pete Albert went down the line to make sure everybody knew, and I think it was okay. But it went very smoothly after that. And we're always looking, Lynn is looking for people to help out on election day. So I guess you could reach out to Town Hall if it was something you might be interested in. But, all right, so is there anything further?
Can I just say one last thing?
Absolutely.
Sorry. I would just like to say thank you to Sarah Hunter, who provided lots of really delicious cookies for all of the polling sites for everybody that worked there.
We didn't get any.
Didn't get it.
Oh,
Oh.
sorry for.
You can
but
take that back.
I have a feeling that she made them. We just didn't disperse them properly. But
Oh,
but-
that's probably.
I believe it.
Thank you.
I'll pass that, I'll pass that on to her.
That is so noted for future.
I caught town staff taking the excess on the way out. So.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
All right, yeah. If there's nothing further, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tom Kane, second by Nancy Murphy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstain? 6-0. Thank you, everyone.